All right, we're going to go ahead and finish up this close reading. The final section, section 4, is on the back. So hopefully you have this out, you have your article out that was kept in the VIP section of your binder, and you can go ahead and turn the 4 reads close reading over to the back where you see the heading right here, number 4, because this is the only part that we have left since we did most of it yesterday. Okay, so the very first question that we have to address is, what text structure did the author use in this text? Circle all those that apply and explain. Okay, so this was about schools and including all students in the same classroom despite any disability that they may or may not have. And to kind of recap, yesterday, Paris, our author, she has a personal experience with this issue. She was she was learning side by side with other students that pushed her to be the very best that she could be. She went on to graduate from university with honors. So she had a very successful, inclusive experience. However, this article did go into schools that did not, that do discriminate against students with disabilities, and they don't let them in the same classroom as everybody else. So if we were to look through our choices here, the structure means how did the author set up the article? So is it sequential? In other words, does it say this is the first thing that happened? This is the second thing that happened? Does it read like directions where you have, whoops, I'm sorry, hang on, I have a phone call. So in my opinion, I don't really feel like this article reads like directions, like you have to follow steps in a sequential order. So I'm going to go ahead and probably rule that out. And I don't think that would be a good choice. Cause and effect, I don't think it, I guess it slightly went into some of the causes, if you don't let kids in, they might not learn as well. I'm going to give that maybe kind of like a yellow, like maybe. It's not completely out. Problem solution, I definitely think a problem was presented that schools are discriminating against other students. I do not feel a solution was given to that. I don't remember reading anywhere about what they're going to do with people who are discriminating. Compare and contrast, to me, is a big yes, because it's comparing schools that do discriminate against schools that do not discriminate. And when you compare and contrast different schools and the way that they're handling different students, it does allow you to see the differences between the two. So I think a big yes for compare and contrast. Description, there is some describing going on. I guess I can't say no to that. The schools are described and what's happening. So honestly, I guess since it says you can apply all of those, I do feel like, let me restart over here. I do feel like this one, cause and effect maybe, description maybe, but if I had to really, really pick just one, I would say compare and contrast without a doubt. All right. Let's go ahead and you can kind of make your final answer there, and we can check that off as being done. All right, our next task underneath section 4, how does this structure contribute to your understanding of the selection? Well, I kind of feel like we just talked about that. The compare and contrast allows you to see what some schools are doing and what some schools are not. As you can see here, I typed out the answer that it helped the reader to understand that some schools are doing right by all students while others are discriminating against students with disabilities. So as long as you have something like that, I think you're good to go. If you want to pause the video and write that down, you are more than welcome to do so. All right, our next task is, what important information did you feel that the author leaves out? So when you get to this question, you have to ask yourself, was anything mentioned in the article that you were like, who are those people? What is that organization? Or perhaps I don't really understand some of the background information that apparently the author is assuming you already knew. These are things that you would write down for this question. So honestly, if I go back to this article, the first thing I really kind of think of, to be honest with you, was this moment up here about the Human Rights Watch. I feel like I needed some more information about this organization. I think in the article it is briefly brought up. So I see it on the back, page 2 of the article, was actually included in our main idea. Human Rights Watch has documented, so it's obviously a program that's collecting data on students who are discriminated against, but I just kind of felt like I didn't have enough information about that. So I would want that included. What important information did the author leave out? I feel like other viewpoints were left out. I mean, I don't know about you, but I personally feel like I would have wanted to hear from the South Africa school or the schools that were in Russia that were mentioned for showing discrimination against their students with disabilities. So I guess I would have wanted to have heard from them. I also think that they could have included maybe some interviews from parents. I think that they could have gotten the perspective from administrators. So just overall, I feel like the only viewpoint that we got was Paris's. So I do feel like that information was left out a bit for me. So you can go ahead and pause the video if you need a second to get these answers written down so far. Does the article show bias? I think first of all, we need to make sure that you understand what the word bias means. This is a term that we're going to be using a lot in my classroom, so I really want you to listen right now. Bias means when you only hear a one person's side, you would be showing bias. So if an article shows bias, that would be only one side is being presented. If you were to discuss that the one-way hallways are fantastic and Mr. Cook wrote the article, and in the article Mr. Cook explains all of the reasons why it's safety and why it's so amazing and why it works so well, if I were to ask you the question if that article showed bias, your answer would be absolutely, because it's just Mr. Cook's viewpoint. You should include students' viewpoint, you should include staff's viewpoint, as well as the administrator. So having as many viewpoints as possible makes something not bias. So this article definitely is showing bias because we only hear from the author, Paris. The next question is right down here. Is the article credible? And I would definitely say yes, the article is credible. Paris is a member of the Human Rights Watch, which is a program made up of 400 members. Wow. The members are made up of credible people such as lawyers, journalists. Because of that, I do feel like you can trust the facts that are presented in this article, since the watch is made up of, the Human Rights Watch, since it's made up of lawyers and journalists, people who have a degree, people who run a professional business. Those are credible. Those are what we consider to be credible sources. So I definitely feel that this article is credible. Okay, if you need to pause the video to write that down, you can. The last few questions, we have one that is asking, is there any context needed to assist the reader in understanding this piece? I felt personally, I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I am a full inclusion teacher. I have inclusive classrooms. So I did have background on what the word inclusive meant, but had I not, and if I were anybody else reading this article, I might not. So I do feel like there could have been more information about what an inclusive classroom should have been explained. I think it could have been explained better. A little bit more information on the Human Rights Watch would have been helpful to me because I was not aware of that program. I had to look it up, to be honest with you. I had never heard of the Human Rights Watch. I like it, and I think it's fascinating, but I didn't have any background knowledge. So I do feel like there was some information that the reader was missing that could have been more helpful from the author. All right, so you can pause the video if you need a minute to copy that down. I'm going to go ahead and talk about this one. The author's tone, I definitely felt that the author was frustrated. I felt that she was protective, especially since she has been through this experience herself. When you have to prove tone, you have to go back into the article and you have to find words that show she was frustrated. So the words like when she talked about the students being isolated, that upset her. When she talked about being segregated and pushed off to the side, that was frustrating for her. The fact that some schools refuse students with disabilities, again, frustrated. And then she went into the reverse, right? When they're being refused, she got protective, saying, hang on a second, they have rights that are being denied. And that they should not, it is false that people feel like they cannot learn, and when in fact they can. So I felt like, these were the words that I picked to write down that helped me prove my tone of feeling frustrated, yet also at the same point that I feel like the author kind of turned that tone. In the beginning, it was more frustrated, and then I think towards the end of the article, she became more protective of students with disabilities. So I found some words that would show that tone. So this is how I would answer these last three. If you need to pause the video to get these copied down, go ahead. And we have now completed a 4 read. This example will act as a model. So the next time when I ask you to get this paper out, the 4 reads article and paper, you will have something to look at to help guide you through the next time you have to answer all of these same questions. So for example, when you do the next one by yourself and it says, hey, I'd like to know about the structure, and you don't know the answer to that, I would go back to this video, back to this sheet, and be like, oh, that's right. We walked through what each of these meant. Maybe I'll go watch this part in the video again, or maybe I will look at my sheet and see if I can figure out how to do it again. So this is to act as a model. To be honest with you, this should be kept in your notes, because doing one together turns this paper into your notes. So if you could please put this with the article in the notes section of your binder at the end of class. Not yet, but at the end of class. Because now you are going to go ahead and work on the Edulastic questions about this article. The good news is, doing a close reading means you don't have to read the article, because we just read the article and dissected, annotated, all 4 parts of the article. So you are very familiar with this article. So now when you do the Edulastic questions, you don't really have to read the article. So that is one nice thing about this. All right, so remember, you're going for a prize with the Edulastic questions. Good luck.